Okay, now we're going to work on the setup for the second lab, which is measuring the acceleration and eventually measuring the acceleration of gravity. Now, for this lab, you're going to need quite a few things. But in this particular portion, you're going to need a mouse pad or a book, some kind of a padding, because when the marble hits the floor, you're not going to want to damage the floor. So I place that here where it's going to hit. You need some tape. I recommend masking tape because it's the least stickiest. I also recommend having some duct tape on hand or some electrician's tapes, that sort of thing. Preferably duct tape because there are some labs where we are going to need some stronger tape. You'll need your 3-meter measuring tape, or you can use your 1.5 meter measuring tape. Doesn't matter which. And then what you're also going to need, of course, the tape that I mentioned, the marble from the marble weight and spring bag, and your stopwatch. Now, word of caution on the stopwatch, it's very, very touchy. And so when you start this thing, it's going to want to double click a lot. Okay, so you might be doing this experiment quite a few times before you get the double clicking down. And you might want to play with it just a little bit to see what you're capable of doing, just how to hit that button. So it says here, you'll be dropping a marble to the floor, so the mouse pad will be keeping the marble from damaging the floor. Place the mouse pad, and you can read that setup. Place the mouse pad or cushioning object on the floor next to an open wall. Start using the tape, starting at the top of the mouse pad. The top of the mouse pad, because that's where we're going to take the bottom of the drop for the marble. The marble's not going to hit the floor. We don't want to go from the floor. And mouse pads do have some thickness, so we want to take those into account. So using this tape, we are going to, and you can lock this into place, which is kind of nice. And so using this tape, the very first thing I do is I mark 1 meter. Calc students, you have to mark it every 20 centimeters from 1 meter to 2 meters. That's about 6 foot, they're a little over 6 foot tall. And trig students, you have to mark it from 1, 1.5, and 2 meters. And so what I would do is take a piece of tape, and I'm not going to do it right this second, but I would take a piece of tape and I would mark my 1 meter mark. I would throw a piece of tape there, and then I'd take a pen and I would mark the 1 meter mark. Okay, that way I have a good measurement on my 1 meter. Then I would repeat the same if you're a calc student. Every 20 centimeters you go up. So don't remove this. Don't remove this and start at 1 again. That will introduce a whole other error, because now your errors will be dependent on one another. So if you were to propagate those, that would be bad. Then you're going to make a couple more marks at, depending on whether you're a trig or calc student. When you go to run the lab now, you'll take the marble, and this can be all done with one person. I wrote these labs myself as I was doing them, so I know that it can all be done with one person. And so you're going to take the marble, and what I do is I put the bottom of the marble at the 1 meter mark. The reason being is the bottom of the marble is where we're going to make our stopping point when we drop this. And so you want to make a couple practice runs, but I'll hold the marble here and simulate 1 meter. And then I'm going to take my stopwatch, and as I walk through this lab, I'm simply going to drop it, make sure it doesn't hit the wall. I'm going to drop it, and as I drop, as soon as I release it, I start my stopwatch. As soon as I see it hit the floor, or hit that mouse pad, I should say, I stop the stopwatch. This can go pretty quick, so you need to be on your toes. So we go start, stop. And you can see I actually went a little fast on the stop part. So I'm going to reset. I'm going to do it again. And now I'm going to mark this down as saying, hey, I screwed up. This is why I'm not using it. So start, stop. Okay, now I double clicked, and so it's still running. So now I have to stop and do it again. And you repeat this until you get the required number of runs for each measurement. Stop, start. Okay, there we go, got it going. So 0.53 seconds. Okay, now I have to give that some sort of an error one way or the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I might have hit it a little bit late on the start, so and then I might have hit it a little bit early on the stop. So worst case scenario is you go, early on one side, late on the other side, and so you'd say plus or minus. I'm going to say plus or minus 0.05. I thought it was pretty close, but I'm not super confident on it. Okay, and that's going to set your error. Now, when you propagate your error, calc students, these errors will kind of add together, not traditionally add, but they'll combine in certain ways, and your errors will be a reflection of your errors in your measurement. And so you want to be very cautious about what you put for an error. You don't want to overstate it, because then you're basically going to say that your measurements are crap. But you don't want to understate them either, because you're going to constrain them when it comes time to propagate, and that can throw everything off. Okay, little break, and we'll move on to the second one.